came in contact with the Revival Fellowship back in 1972 in Adelaide. And at that time, I was a young man, and I had gone to college and gone through college and graduated and had my certificate as a doctor of chiropractic. And I was starting my own business. I married and I had 3 children. And I had no problems in my life. I'd had a very good upbringing with my parents. And a gentleman rang us up and invited us to go to his place to see some slides. Sue and I were both interested in the environment and what was happening in the environment back in 1972. And so we went along to this chap's place. I might say it was under protest on my part. Sue gave my word and I had to go. Yeah, I'm a good husband. I always get the last say, yes, dear. And so we went along to this chap's place and he asked me, do you believe in the Bible, Terry? And I said, no, I believe it's a book of fairy tales. I said, some nice stories, some not so nice. And he said, well, can I show you a prophecy about the River Nile and some of the problems that were happening. And at that time, there was these environmental problems that were happening over in Egypt. And so I was interested and I said, yes, let's have a look. And so he started to read what I'm going to be reading with you today, sharing with you tonight. And I was astounded at what he was reading out of the Bible. The things that he was reading were the things that I was hearing in the news in 1972. It was quite remarkable. And it made me rethink the Bible and whether the Bible had some, accuracy about it. And I spoke with the man for quite some time. We, over the past, long time, I have revisited those particular verses hundreds of times because as time goes on, you get more and more information, through the internet and through news and so on. You get to hear all the new things that are happening over there. And I'm particularly talking about the River Nile tonight. Now, I've just got to find where the button is. There we go. There's 4 major rivers over there that from the Bible. The Jordan River, the Tigris River, the Euphrates River, and the Nile River. It's interesting, the Euphrates and the Nile River and the Mediterranean were 3 borders of the original Promised Land. So those particular rivers are very important. We're going to cover the Nile tonight. I'd love to cover the others, but won't have time. The Nile River is, probably most of you know, it's probably the longest river in the world. Some 6,600 kilometres or something. I'll get my notepad. Try to remember how many kilometres, it's too many. The main thing is it runs through 11 countries. And as it runs through those countries obviously need the water to supply needs for their people. And as it comes down, the 2 main tributaries to it are the White Nile and the Blue Nile. Now, the White Nile starts at Lake Victoria in Tanzania, and the Blue Nile is Lake Tana in Ethiopia. And these are 2 very important places. As the water flows down, the people in Egypt live on the water. Now, I'll give you some idea. The Greek historian, I think you say his name, Herodotus, that'll do anyway. He made a statement that that Egypt was the gift of the Nile. Now, the Nile itself, supplies all the water for Egypt. Without that, 96% of the people in Egypt live within a few kilometres of the Nile River. So it's a very important thing for them. And also, when you think about it, I think it's 96% of the landmass of Egypt is desert. So there's only 6% that these people are actually living on. It's quite a remarkable river, the way that it supplies all these needs for these people. But what amazed me was the things, oh, goodness gracious, Terry, you've pushed the button too many times. Where did I go? I got the wrong way. That's it. That's the one. So what I want to share with you tonight is some of the things that I saw back in 1972 that made me rethink the Bible and look into the Bible. And as I say, I've revisited this particular area for quite a few times. I thought I might have trouble reading that up there, so I put it here. So this is in Isaiah 19. It says, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord who rideth on a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and Egypt shall, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptian of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. This is probably one of the most important points, and I think that up the top you can see there, Pastor John put it in red for me so that you can see that's one of the particular things. You see on the right-hand side here, I've marked down the things that I particularly want to talk about. The idols of Egypt being moved, the waters failing from the sea, and the river drying up, and the fishing industry being affected, and kingdom against kingdom, or city against city, or neighbour against neighbour. These are the 4 points. Actually, there's 18 points in these 10 verses for this one prophecy. Now, I haven't got time to cover all 18. I'm just going to cover those 4 points. If there's questions, by all means, afterwards, come and ask me. I probably won't be able to answer them, but I'll try. So it goes on from there. It says, and I will set Egyptian against Egyptian, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, everyone against his neighbour. There it is there. It says city against city, kingdom against kingdom. So the Lord has laid out the things that he's going to do. I want to point out that the most important thing about this is that it's Bible prophecy. Now, I don't know about all of you people. I know myself that before I came and got involved with the Revival Fellowship, I didn't have a lot of belief in God. I was brought up as a Catholic boy, went through Catholic colleges, went on, got married and had children, and I wasn't really interested in the Bible. In fact, I didn't have time for the Bible. I had other things that I had to do. I didn't think the Bible was that important until this particular night that this chap started to show me things. And I began to realise that there's a pattern in the Bible of the things that the Lord has set in place, and we can't change them. So prophecy is one of those things. Now, prophecy, when you first read them, you might say, oh, it's just words. But when you look into history, you see that they're fulfilled. Now, it's remarkable when you see all these things being fulfilled from one book. There's the Bible consists of 66 books. And in those 66 books, there's all these prophecies. And I suppose that because of this chap telling me about the Nile, I've got very caught up in Bible prophecy. And I find that it's probably one of the most interesting things that you could look into. Now, actually in verse 4, it says there that I will give the Egyptian... I'll try again. And the Egyptians will I give unto the hands of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them. Thus saith the Lord. Now, Bible prophecy, these 18 points are not all filled at one instant. Okay, I might point that out. It's a very important point. These are fulfilled over a period of time. Now, that particular one there, I have researched things, and according to, again, the Greek historian Herodotus says that Cambyses, the son of Cyrus the Great, he actually conquered Egypt, And he was a fierce man and a horrible ruler. And he ruled over those people with an iron hand, I might say. And you would think, oh, well, is that part of this prophecy? Actually, there was 12 of these fierce leaders that ran the country. They were real dictators and really cruel people, the way that they treated their people. So I feel that maybe that was fulfilled. That would have been back in, I don't know, 525, I think I wrote down. That happened. And I want to talk about what's happening in our age. All right, I don't want to talk. I love history and I love going back over the things, but what I want to talk about is the things that's happened in your age. No matter what age you are, okay, you might be 18 or 15, you might be 50 or 60 or even as old as me, 29 and some months. And you know that it doesn't matter at what age you are, this area that I want to cover, there should be something in there for you to see. All right, so I might move on to the next slide here. Okay, there's an interesting slide here for you. This is in 1960, around about 1960, the Egyptian government decided that they would build a dam. And then when they decided that they would build the dam, they found that it was going to flood all their temples and their idols and so on. So they got together a great group of people, scientists and engineers, and they moved all these. Well, they moved some of these monuments, as you can see here. Okay, there you see how they're cutting them up. Here's one of the heads being cut there, one being transported on a truck. You see this area in the back here? This is when they cut these temples down, they had to move them somewhere. Now, they cut them out of the face of a cliff, and they had to move them somewhere. And so, therefore, they had to build a structure. It's quite a remarkable thing. Might go to the next slide. Okay, here we go. This will show you here. There's, where's my torch gone? That one there. Okay, you see here, workplace and safety. How would you go workplace and safety? Have a look at the ladder that they used to go up. People standing on the edge. That wouldn't happen to today's society, would it really? You know, these people were doing some pretty dangerous stuff. Down the bottom here, this area here is where Abu Simbel was originally, and the temple of Nefertiti, I think that's what his wife's name was. Okay, and they moved them from there because they were going to be flooded, and they moved them. This is where they've moved them to. And you can see here they were cut out of a cliff face, and you can see here they're mounds. So they had to build these mounds, and when you think about it, the statue of Ramses, okay, was 66 feet high, so it wasn't a small thing, it was really quite large. And the engineers that got there, these were people from all over the world went there to try and move these monuments to save them. And as you can see here, it says that 18 structures were saved or moved. Okay, 6 structures were partially saved, but 21 were completely flooded and covered over and lost. So, you know, they did a monumental job. The task that they had was amazing. Some of the pictures that you can find on the internet, there's even little old black and white video clips that are there of these areas here, the heads here. They were cutting them off with a handsaw. They had this big, long handsaw, push-pull saw, and they were cutting through the stone so that they could move it. So, as I say, it's quite a monumental task, but it fulfills that verse that I said, you know, that the idols would be moved. And there's so many idols that they lost, which is really quite tragic that they lost them. And it's mankind, I suppose, we're always going ahead in things, you know, trying to keep up with things, and sometimes we lose things. But the amazing thing is that they were able to keep these 2 particular ones, which were the main ones. that they wanted to keep. They were, I don't know, as I say, they were 66 feet high, so they weren't small. The people that were working on it, some people unfortunately lost their lives working on it, but they found it had some Egyptian men there that were able to mix up the sand and concrete so that when they finished the new models here, you could hardly tell where they'd been cut. They did such a good job. So a monumental task. But the point I really wanted to point out was when I was spoken to, this was one of the things that shocked me that they could do that at that particular time. So I'll move on to the next slide. That's the wrong button, Terry. Okay. Here's a little bit more about it. Well, you can see that's the temple of Ramses, okay, or Abu Simbel, if you want to call it that. And an interesting part about it, that twice a year, the sunlight would shine down this passage. It's 56 metres it would shine down. And in the back, right down the back here, as this one here also shows, right down the back, were these statues, okay? And they were the statues of a couple of their gods, their pharaoh. And one of them was always in darkness. This one here was always in darkness, probably because he was the god of darkness. And so that used to happen. Now, you think about it, in Egypt, at the time when that was built, okay, so we're talking, I can't remember, 2,000 years BC maybe, they built that. And they worked out how that the light could shine down there and shine on these gods twice a year. So when they moved the structures, the scientists had to get together and work out how that they could keep this biannual thing happening. So they worked on it and they moved it by 1 day. Okay, so now it's 1 day later than it used to be. So not only were the monuments moved, but even the gods and the sun shining through were moved completely. So maybe we're seeing a little bit of a fulfillment of scripture here in a number of different things. First of all, in the physical thing, but also in the spiritual thing. God moves upon things. God has plans. He has a plan for you and for me, and he wants you and I to fulfill that plan. So here we are with these people. We'll move on to the next slide. I've only got a few slides for you today. Okay, there we go. Okay, now the second point I wanted to cover was the waters shall fail from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up. Now this is this article that I got here was from a science magazine here, and it talks about the how much is the River Nile drying up. Okay, so the delta, which was, I might say, the delta was one of the most fertile parts of land in the entire world, the Nile Delta. Anyway, and now it's shrinking and slowly fading away. And one of the key contributors were the building of the Aswan High Dam. So when they built the dam, they had to first of all move all the monuments so that they could keep these monuments. And then they didn't think about these things happening. Now, this is what I was reading in 1972, how that they were having trouble with the land not being fertile anymore. And so they were talking about building, big industrial things to make fertilizer so that they could continue to produce the land. Now, this was so important for thousands of years that has been going on. And they've been producing food on that land, I don't know how long, okay? There's some pictures to show you how it's failing, okay? So it is shrinking so much that the salt water is coming in, and the salt water is coming in through here, into this land here, and slowly shrinking all this, and it's becoming like this, infertile land. And the farmers are finding that it's impossible to do things. this particular farmer made a comment, that about how that when he tries to plant his seed, he has to wait for something to get wet because the ground is so hard he can't get the seed in there. As you can see, he's walking barefoot, throwing seed and pushing the seed into the ground with his feet. So it has changed. The river is beginning to dry up. It hasn't dried up completely yet, but it's on its way. There was quite a few areas or rivers that ran out to the Mediterranean Sea there, and half of those are no longer running because they're not getting the water. It's quite staggering, really, that mankind can just build a dam and cause so much problem. This is an article from Penn State University, which is a very important university in America. This is from their library. This is about the fishing industry. Okay, it says 5 years after the Aswan Dam was built, okay, they managed to catch 3,628 tonnes of fish annually. All right, that's a lot of fish, isn't it? But they expected to catch 20,000. Then the hardest hit one was the sardine industry. That was expected, they were in 1962, I think it might say it up there. They were catching 18,000 tonnes of fish. And just a few years later, the best they could do was 460 tonne. So the fishing industry was affected dramatically by the building of the Aswan High Dam. And what happened was, when the dam, before the dam was built, the floods would come down and would fertilise all the land either side of the river and down through the Nile Delta. And it was, as I say, the most fertile land in the world. And then it would run out into the Mediterranean Sea, where the fish would eat what was coming down. And the Egyptians could just go and cast a net in the sea and catch fish. After they'd built the dam, they found that they couldn't do that anymore. So they had to get themselves boats and go further out to sea. And even they got to the stage where they were crossing boundaries, ocean boundaries for their fishing. They found that was really causing quite a problem. And so in the, I'm not quite sure when they did it, right? Maybe 2010, they decided that they would do something about it. The Egyptian government decided to build a major project and infrastructure. Okay, this project is actually fish ponds that they've made and a way of carrying. You can see there's 5,908 fish ponds that they built, covering an area of 1,500 square metres. Okay, or 1,500 acres, I should say. Okay, they have found that the fishing industry has been affected so much. Now, the Egyptians have relied for centuries on the fish industry to feed their people. And the only way that they can do it now is by doing this. Now, there is a scripture in the Bible, or part of that. I might have to find it for you. It actually talks about, where are we? It talks about, where are we? I don't want to miss this one because, here we are. It's in verse 10 of that particular chapter. And they shall be broken in the purpose thereof, all that make sluices and ponds for fish. So they're saying that it will be broken. The ponds for the fish will be broken. Now, how many ponds have we got? 5,900 ponds, and it could be broken. That's not fulfilled at the moment. These were only opened recently, one in 2017 and the other one in 2021. So we're bringing this right up to date, this issue. This is history happening in your lifetime. It's something that you should realise is an important thing. When you read the Bible and you see those stories and you see in history it happening, it's amazing. It should make us think, maybe God's got a message for us. Maybe God's trying to tell us something. He's been trying to tell people for centuries to do the right thing, and mankind still doesn't do the right thing. We'll go on to point 5 for you. Okay, point 5 is the Ethiopian dam. Okay, we're talking about the river drying up. This is a very important thing. This has happened just recently. They've only opened that particular dam a few years ago. All right, the Ethiopian, or GERD they call it. Okay, now the Blue Nile supplies 70% of the water that flows down the Nile River. So the people in Sudan and the people in Egypt count on that. Now, they were drawing the lines. I did a presentation on this probably back in 2017 when they were talking about it, and Egypt was prepared to go to war over it. And Sudan said that they would blow the dam up. So they were sort of in that position where they were prepared to try and stop something. It's a war over water. That's never ever happened before, and it could have happened. They're still talking about it. Sudan is in a lot of trouble at the moment. Sudan has a civil war. For the last 3 years, they've had the civil war, so they're a little bit distracted and probably not so much worried about what's going on with the water. But Egypt know that if what's the place? Egypt knows if they shut the dam off, they will have no or very little water. They'll only have what comes down from the White Nile. So Ethiopia has decided that they'll fill this dam, and it's been taking them a long time to fill it. It's now full, and it's running. Now, Ethiopia needed that for, electrical energy for their people and many other things. They needed it. But Egypt and Sudan are the people that suffer from that particular dam. Now, I'll just go to this bit here, that one there. Okay, just show you this. This is, there we go. They've got the Blue Nile waterfall. That's an amazing thing. People who go there visiting. I've never been there. I've never been to Egypt. I've never been to see these things. But when I go on the internet and search things out and go to the history sites, I find it really quite amazing. And you can see here, this is the flow of the river. You've got the Blue Nile, you've got the White Nile, you've also got the Tikisi River. Now, the Tikisi River, they built a dam on that 15 years ago, and that stopped the flow of water down into the Nile. So they're doing lots of, or Ethiopia is doing lots of things to shut the water off, not to stop to punish Egypt. Okay, they're not trying to get to Egypt. They're trying to look after their thousands and thousands of people. Where's the button gone there? This slide here shows, see these black ones here? The red one is the GERD Dam, or the Grand Ethiopian Dam. The black ones are the ones planned and may have even started. I haven't looked it up just lately, but they're the ones that are planned for the future. So they've already got one dam blocking off the water, and they build 3 more. How much water is going to go down into Egypt, and how are the people in Egypt going to survive without that? And I just can't see that people can survive if they were to do that, and they could very easily do it. Ethiopia had made some pretty harsh statements back in 2019 that they didn't care if they went to war over it. They were prepared. They felt that they had the army that could beat Egypt. And maybe they were right. I don't know. So, okay. So what does it all mean? The estimates suggest that there's 2,500 prophecies in the Bible. Okay, and and they're being fulfilled with remarkable accuracy. And there'll be some others following me that will show you some more of the accuracy of them being fulfilled. Okay, so 70 or 80 or 90% of it's already fulfilled. So there's maybe a message in there somewhere. So what's it all mean to you and I? What it means to us is that this is a volatile area that we need to keep our eye on so that we can see what's going on, so we can see Bible prophecy being fulfilled, and we can make a decision what we can do for ourselves, because we can't change what the nation is doing, but we can change where we end up. So I couldn't help but put this one extra important prophecy. He that believeth on, this is Jesus Christ speaking, he that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. Okay, and so what was he talking about? In verse 39 it says, but this he spake, he was speaking of the Spirit which they that believed on him should receive, for the Holy Ghost was not yet given, because Jesus was not yet glorified. Now there's a whole lot of prophecies about Jesus Christ that I don't think that we're covering tonight, but happy to talk to you about them and explain all these prophecies to you. There are, like I say, there's 2,500 prophecies there. Can't cover it in one night unless we go for a long, long time. But what we need to do is we need to know that where we stand right with God. Egypt didn't stand right with God, and God punished them. We don't want to be in that position. There's laws and rules that God has laid down for us. And when you think about it, when you drive down the road, there are laws for you. There's speed limits. And if you don't do the speed limit and the policeman catches you, you pay the penalty. There's laws and rules in the Bible that if we don't do them, we might get caught out. And we don't want to be in that position. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to hand over to Pastor Tim now.